Hey guys, and welcome to the video. I am going to be going over my honest opinion of the amazing digital circus, The Last Act, today. Now, I would just like to say that this is my honest opinion, so if you disagree with anything, that is not on me, really. You will be welcome to share your opinion in the comments, obviously, but this is my opinion, so I'm just going to say how I feel about it. If you don't agree with me or get angry with what I say, then you can always click off of the video. Anyway, let's get right into it. I would just like to say right now that I have a pre-recording of myself drawing something the Amazing Digital Circus themed as the background for this video. So you guys can always just watch that while you play, but also you could just have this video playing in the background of something else. So the first point that I want to talk about is quality. I feel like the animation was another banger. Obviously, Glitch has been doing very well with animating this series. The quality is super high, and this episode was no different than the others. You can see from episode 1 to the last act just how much they've grown and adapted to making this show, as the animation quality genuinely has gotten 10 times better. Honestly, it was one of the factors that made me enjoy it so much. And then the other part of quality is of the plot. And by that, I'm not only talking about pacing, but also just overall story quality. I feel like it needed gap filler episodes. It needed more episodes than just 9. There were so many loose ends that were left untied by the finale, and I feel like it really could have used 3 or 4 more gap episodes to fill a lot of the questions that the fandom had. I understand that sometimes you need to leave questions in order to keep the fandom alive, but I feel like it still should have answered some because they left a lot of them. The next point is the pacing of the story, and the first thing I'm going to talk about is how sometimes they kept the scenes were way too long. Like, for example, we could have the scene where Pomni and Ragatha are hugging, like making up to each other. And as much as the scene, I know Glitch was trying to make it a powerful scene, a powerful and emotional scene that affected the viewers, they just made it a bit too long. It just showed like rotating around Pomni and Ragatha hugging for a good 30 to 40 seconds. And then they just started walking away from each other and made the whole scene last about 2 minutes, which honestly I feel like was a bit too much. There's always good in an emotional moment, but when you overdo it, it kind of removes the effect and just makes it more of a filler. Now I'm going to talk about the off-screen stuff, which was part of the reasons that I'm not giving this rating of 5 stars. Some of the very important plot points happened off camera, like Jax abstracting. This was a very crucial plot point because obviously about half or more of the episode was about Jax abstracting and Pomni inside of his mind and all that. Such a crucial plot point should have happened on camera instead of just the cast talking and then of Zubul panning into the view and saying, of course he would do this to us. I feel like they should have shown Jax abstracting and how it happened. That would have had more of an effect. And overall, just it would have affected the show in a better way. The next thing that I'm going to be talking about is character development. I feel like Gooseworks focused mostly on Jax in this, and I get like each character kind of gets their own episode for main development. Like Jax was the main focus in the last act, kind of like how Gangle was the main focus in episode 4 in the restaurant. As much as like I know about like how Goosework loves Jax, because she said that she based Jax off of the things that she loves in a character. So obviously Jax would be her favorite. But then again, for a finale, I feel like you shouldn't really focus on one character. You should focus on the entirety of the cast together because it's a finale, and tying up all the loose ends for all the characters rather than just focusing on Jax abstracting and then spending a very long time having Pomni inside of his mind trying to save him and yet to no end because abstraction isn't able to be undone. The next point I'm talking about is character focus. Kind of like I said, is Gooseworks mostly focused on Jax on episode 9 because of the fact that he abstracted, and Pomni spent most of her time inside of Jax's mind before Kinger and them pulled her out of him. It was kind of a waste, honestly. Like, as much as I loved the part where Pomni was inside of Jax's mind, it was a big gap, I guess, in the story because it didn't really end in anything. It just ended in Kinger and Zubul and Ragatha and all the cast pulling Pomni back out to no reward. Nothing happened out of it. Jax didn't unabstract. He didn't go crazy or anything. Nothing really happened. It was just a big gap in the episode where all these important things that we learned about Jax happened, and then they were kind of useless facts to be known since he didn't unabstract or any key thing happened to him in the end, except for being put into the tent. The next thing I'm talking about is rewatch value. In my opinion, I would definitely watch this again. I'm going to rewatch it when it comes out on YouTube, which is probably going to be the day that I release this. I would definitely rewatch it. I'm probably going to live stream it, but it was very enjoyable to me, honestly. I cried multiple times watching the last act, which never really happens for me. I never really cry during any shows that I watch, but I cried multiple times during this movie. It just shows that I definitely enjoyed it, but also just part of how sad it is that it's over, because that show is obviously, it was a part of me. I've been a fan for a really long time of it, and it was really sad to see it end. The next thing I'm going to be talking about is expectations versus reality. When I walked into the theater, my expectations was that the crew was going to repatch up the circus, which kind of did happen, with Kinger teaching everyone how to use their summon ability. So they summoned pieces into the circus and filled in the gaps in it. That kind of happened. I was expecting that. What I definitely was not expecting, and what I was hoping didn't happen, was Jax abstracting. I was hoping and thinking that Pomni and the crew were going to make up with Jax, since he's kind of been more low-key in the most recent advertisements. I figured that, well, obviously it was around him isolating himself and stuff, but I figured that the cast, now that Kane is gone and the circus is beat up and they know they can't get out, I figured that the cast would have tried to make up with him, and overall they would just live as a happy family in the end, or they ended up all abstracting and leaving the circus, or they all ended up escaping. Those were my 3 big theories. Jax abstracting wasn't super far-fetched. It was in the back of my mind. Obviously, since Jax was my main character, I was not hoping for that to happen at all, but it did, and that was a big bummer to me. And then kind of the plot point where Pomni gets into Jax's mind was a big twist for me. I did not expect that at all, for them to be able to go into an abstraction's mind. Kind of makes me think what would happen if they got into the cellar and they could go through all the abstracted past crew into their brain and see what was that cool. That would have been fun. Next thing I'm going to say is the thing that I liked the most. The thing that I definitely liked the most was probably the ending. As much as I wanted them to escape the circus, I loved how they were all like a family. Kane was finally listening to the cast and working together with them to make a good life in the circus. The next thing I'm talking about is the thing that I liked the least out of the finale of the Amazing Digital Circus. And honestly, the thing that I liked the most is how Jax abstracted off camera. I know I've already talked about this, but it really was annoying to me, honestly, because again, he's my favorite character. I was really hoping he didn't abstract. I kind of knew that it was inevitable, but I still didn't want him to. And the fact that they just showed it not even on screen and it just kind of happened kind of made me mad, honestly, because I really wanted to see my boy Jax do a big plot point, and he did, but not a good one. And I didn't get to see the bad one either, so that kind of upset me a little bit. Did the episode meet its expectations? I feel like in the entirety of the fandom, it did not really meet the expectations. To me, it didn't, but it still lived up to the hype. It felt kind of too short. It should have been at least like an hour, just the finale itself. Was the ending satisfying? The ending was pretty satisfying. Honestly, I was really happy that Kane started listening and they kind of turned into a family. And it made me really happy when I left the cinema, even if it left loose ends untied. That is all for this video. Thank you guys so much for listening in. If you stayed the entire time, I love you all, and come back for the next video about TADC. I'll see you later. Please subscribe and have a great day.